I'm not a scholar, but let me show you something, the way people have abused my beliefs about the Bible. And I'm not even a scholar, but I can demonstrate this to you. And so if you care about honesty and being true to the text, and you see people do this to other people who disagree with them, you can have the honest position. Seems to me anyway. Someone can honestly correct me if I'm missing something here, but what if I told you that everyone living and believing in Jesus will never not die? Is that a true statement? Yes, it is. No, not ever die. The one living and believing in me will not a chance die. That's a true statement, right? But there's a context. What is the context? In the age to come. Is that relevant? Well, you tell me. What if its relevance is necessary to keep Jesus from contradicting himself? And I don't just mean somewhere in the Bible and then you can misunderstand it. I mean in the verse right before this verse. This is verse 11:26. Now, if I say, look, everyone living and believing in me, that is Jesus speaking about himself, will double negation, he will not ever die. So that's true. Does that mean, what does that mean exactly? In some sense, it means you cannot a chance die in the way he means it here. And so you could say, Jesus says, if you live and believe in him, you'll never, ever die. And it's a double negation. It can't happen. And that's true, depending on what you mean. The context tells us what it means. This is a very important line that's actually missing in the English. Why does it matter? Because if Jesus isn't saying something contradictory, notice what he says here. The one who's, look, I'm the resurrection, the one believing in me. So this is believers believing in Jesus, even if he should die, meaning he does die, some do die, but will live. So there's ones who believe in Jesus according to him that will, and this is the same word as verse 26, apothene. So what does that mean? You get to insert whatever you think it means, or do you have to make it make sense according to the text? Jesus says, people who believe in him, some of them will apothene. Of course, then he says they will live. And then in the next verse, what does he say? You will not, if you're living and believing in him, you cannot ever die in the age to come. So what does this mean? Well, it certainly doesn't mean that you can't ever die full stop, because he says some people do. And it's the same word for death. What's the best way to understand this? You won't die the second death. It's the only way to understand it. People die, believers die, but there's a resurrection. But if you are one of those people who believe in him, even though you die, you'll be resurrected. But likewise, those believing ones who will die but then be made to be alive, then they'll be alive, and they'll be the ones living and believing in me after I resurrect them. Now they'll never, ever die in the age to come. So if someone takes this verse in the English and says, no one who believes in Jesus ever dies, is contradicting what Jesus said in the verse directly before it. The implication is exactly what I just described. It's the second death. And to deny it is to make Jesus into a liar, or confused, or say contradictory things one sentence after the other. So what does this mean? It means death. There's a reason it's called the first and second death, because death is not being alive, and believers do die, but they're resurrected. And if they're resurrected as believers, they won't face death, because Paul tells us once you're resurrected, you receive the immortal body at the resurrection, which is the teaching of the New Testament through Paul and Jesus when we look at the original languages. What are the implications of that? Seventh-day Adventists are right. And you believing that you never die, so it means you're consciously alive after death, is made up nonsense.